Why do we go through life feeling disconnected? Like something is missing, but we can't quite name it. And more importantly, what actually helps us move through this discomfort? In my research in psychology and ritual, and through my own experience with music, I found that this isn't random. There's a structure to it. And once you see it, you start to understand what's happening in your life and how to move through it. The problem of disconnection. A lot of people today feel a lack of meaning, connection, and purpose. There are obvious reasons. For example, pressure, cost of living, technology, constant change. But underneath that, there's something deeper. In traditional cultures, people weren't left alone to figure this out. They had systems, rituals, that connected them to something deeper within themselves. That deeper part is what psychology would call the self. The self. Carl Jung described the self as the total psyche, both conscious and unconscious parts. So it's not just who you think you are, but everything you are. Jung saw life as a process of moving from ego to self, which means the ego isn't the center. The self takes that position. And the shift between ego and self doesn't feel comfortable. To the ego, it feels like something is dying. Let's break this down. The persona is the mask that we wear every day. The ego is what you identify with, who you think is the I. While the shadow is everything that you've pushed away, from childhood to teenagehood to now. And the self is the deeper core underneath it all. You see, the self isn't always visible, but it is always active. It draws you towards wholeness, whether you recognize it or not. What happens when we don't recognize the self? Traditional cultures had rites of passage. They guided people through change, from childhood to adulthood, from one identity to another. These were structured processes of transformation. Today, we don't really have that. Instead, we have entertainment, vast array of experiences, short-term escapes. They give relief, but the underlying structure of the person remains the same, so the cycle repeats. Initiation still happens, whether we know it or not. Even without rituals, initiation still happens. It shows up as breakdowns, life changes, loss, inner pressure, or a pull towards something unknown. And these experiences always follow a structure, one that we can learn to recognize. The 3 stages of transformation. Anthropologists like Arnold van Gennep and Victor Turner identified a consistent pattern. It goes like this. It starts with separation, then it moves into a liminal stage, and it ends with reintegration. Let's look at these stages. Stage 1, separation. This is where something breaks in your normal life. For example, losing a job, the end of a relationship, burnout, or a pull towards something new. It's uncomfortable because the current version of you can't continue in the same way. Something has to be released. Stage 2, liminality. This is the in-between stage. You're no longer who you were, but you haven't stabilized into what you're becoming. This stage is confusing, unstable, and emotionally intense. You might feel lost, unmotivated, or disconnected from life. This is where transformation occurs, even if it doesn't feel like it. Stage 3, reintegration. This is where things come back together. Not as they were, but reorganized. You return with more clarity, a greater sense of direction, and a different relationship to yourself. You don't return to the same place, you return with a different structure. Why this matters. Once you recognize this pattern, you stop interpreting these moments as personal failure. You begin to see them as part of a process. And just this ability to see brings great relief. This is where music comes in. Music has always been part of this process, not just culturally, but psychologically. For example, in flow states. Flow states are when you are deeply in the music and the sense of ego softens. In these moments, time shifts, attention narrows, and there's a feeling of coherence. This is a temporary alignment with the self, and these states are essential in the development of consciousness. Inner messaging. The self is always in communication. It communicates through dreams, intuition, synchronicities, and also music. When you start treating music as meaningful, you begin to notice patterns. Emotions may arise when listening to music. Images may form in the mind. And associations may just magically appear. Knowing how to work with music in this way comes through experience. It means that music works through you to bring you deeper inner insight. Creative expression. When you create music, your attention moves away from managing the ego. You're engaged in shaping something that is emerging. And this gives you direct access to the self. And with practice, that connection becomes more stable. Another way that music connects us deeper with the self is through creative collaboration. Creating with others brings us into a shared space where the ego becomes less dominant. In those moments, people connect through something deeper. Victor Turner called this communitas. It's a state where roles drop away and people meet directly. They connect beyond racial, cultural, or religious lines to the essence of what we are. Closing. What this points to is clear. Disconnection follows a pattern. Transformation follows a structure. And music provides a way to engage with this process. When you recognize the pattern, you stop resisting what's happening and begin to move with it. See, transformation is ongoing, and understanding the process changes how you meet it. Over time, that reshapes how you live. If you want to go deeper into this, I've written a free short ebook called Music and the Self. It expands on these ideas and gives you a framework to work with this process. I've linked it in the description.